Be sure to subscribe and click on the bell for notifications on future uploads. Hello everyone, Sulli-Days here, or you can call me Sully. Welcome to Happy Sulli-Days, and I'd like to start the season off by going over the traditional Rankin Bass special. But this one's going to be an episode from a TV show that I talked about earlier on in Halloween. Festival of Family Classics. As mentioned last time, it's an animated series from Rankin Bass which originally aired in syndication from 1972 to 1973, with each episode being a retelling of a classic fairy tale, folktale, and/or literature. And as such, we come to the Christmas episode of that show. Originally aired on December 17th, 1972, it is simply called A Christmas Tree. The episode is based on the story of the same name by Charles Dickens, though it's more of a condensed version as the actual story goes over every toy that has a story to it. Two children named Peter and Mary were visiting their grandfather Charles Dickens, who tells the story of what Christmas was like for him as a child, in which the Christmas tree was so big and tall and the toys were decorations, and that the holiday was more of an adventure. And as Peter and Mary were partaking in Dickens' story, Peter Piper appears to say that the essence of Christmas is stolen, and so Peter and Mary have to go on a quest to get the essence back, thus meeting several characters along the way, including a mouse named Percival and a giant named Horatio, who is, in this episode, the giant from Jack and the Beanstalk. I mentioned this episode before in my review of Jack-o'-lantern, and thought it was odd when I first saw it, on VHS a few years ago. Yet, watching it again for this review, especially after Jack-o'-lantern, it's honestly better than the last one in terms of what happens in it. But, much like Jack-o'-lantern, it does have a few issues in terms of how it tells the story. And I do mean a few issues because there's not that much compared to the previous episode. For one thing, Charles Dickens is in this, and it's not like in Muppet Christmas Carol where Gonzo plays Dickens and provides narration for the film, even poking fun at how he knows what's happening when he's not in the same room as the main character. Here, it's just Charles Dickens with his grandchildren, and he tells of how Christmas was like for him as a child. But the difference from Jack-o'-lantern is where instead of the grandfather telling the story and somehow acting like it's all happening right in front of him and his grandchildren, when he's really telling it than showing it, here Dickens tells Peter and Mary to be part of his story, which is what ends up happening, which gets confusing by the end, but we'll get to that soon. The tree in their home grows big and tall, and the toys appear on and under the tree, as Dickens explains each of the toys and how Christmas was an adventure. And this adventure begins with Peter and Mary going on a quest to find the essence of Christmas that Peter Piper says was stolen, supposedly from the giant from Jack and the Beanstalk. The kids climb the Christmas tree, that first turns into a beanstalk, and makes it up to the top of the clouds, where they meet Percival the mouse, who tells them where the giant lives. Now, this part with the giant is supposed to take place after the events of Jack and the Beanstalk, and in the original tale, Jack cuts down the beanstalk and the giant fell to his death while climbing down. Yet here, the giant, named Horatio in this, survived his fall when chasing Jack and is afraid of heights. So the beanstalk wasn't cut down and the giant might have fell by accident, which is a very odd way to do the original story. Anyway, the giant's maid, named Esmeralda, happened to help Jack in the past, and is now helping Peter and Mary by hiding them in the oven, where Percival tries to help the kids escape through the oven flue, only to be found by Horatio and chases them out of the castle. Once the kids made it back down, they say they didn't get the essence, but that doesn't matter anyway, because Peter Piper says the essence is already stolen from the giant, maybe before the kids went up the beanstalk, so why did the kids went up there at all? Regardless, Piper says the essence is now stolen by a magician named Mantu, and Peter and Mary have to pass 3 obstacles to get it, and travel to each one via a flying star from the tree that turned back from a beanstalk. The first one is on the river Gaddywine, run by King Gaddywine, where the elves have become trolls by Mantu. The second one is of Orlando, the snow dragon of Okabar. And the third is Mantu himself. And they get out of each one pretty easily and on the first try, if you can believe it. And so it all ends with the essence of Christmas being released, Peter and Mary head out, And this is where the bit of Dickens telling the kids to be part of his story becomes confusing, because everything that Peter and Mary went through seems to be all a dream. Dickens was telling his story and found that the kids fell asleep, but they say they were on the adventure with him, so what actually happened here? Was it a dream or a real adventure? It's quite confusing, because it looks like the kids got bored very quickly from the beginning. Also, the elves of Gaddywine still look like elves, and not trolls. So why did Peter Piper say to return to trolls? As you can tell, the story has some structure issues, as it feels like scenes are missing or some moments didn't follow through on what they started with. But there are some decent moments in it as well. The backgrounds and atmosphere of the episode are colorful enough, usually resorting to some light colors reminiscent of Rankin Bass's own holiday specials, like Frosty the Snowman. Even the clouds have a winter setting, which is pretty surreal and creative. There's a bit where Horatio tries to impress Esmeralda with his 5-foot thumb rhymes, trying not to use his more well-known one as it bothers his housekeeper. That's neat enough. And though this isn't a musical, there are two songs which bookend the episode, Deck the Halls and We Wish You a Merry Christmas, and they're done well enough. And while the story does have problems, it is better told than going straight forward and to have a point to it all. I think. As a whole, this episode is okay. The characters are fine, the story is fine enough to follow, and the animation is alright as the standard Rankin Bass animation. For directors Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass, this one's an easier sit-through than Jack-o'-lantern, with a more contained story and a more better feel, with it being a Christmas episode and not a Christmas-esque one. But much like Jack-o'-lantern, there's still a few oddities in it, like how the story's structured and feeling all over the place. But it's mostly minor compared to the last one, and left me questioning just enough. It's not a Christmas show I watch every year, for the stuff I mentioned, despite discovering it a few years ago, but I think it's fair enough to look back on every now and then, for how oddly serviceable it is. So today, this episode will be getting a rating of 2.5 plus stars. So thank you for joining me. Like, comment, subscribe, follow on Facebook or Twitter, support me on Patreon, and until next time for more of Happy Sulli-Days.